Hey, this is Luke. Welcome to the VOUS Friends and Family YouTube channel. I'm so glad you're here. At VOUS, we never want to go at it alone. We believe in passing on what we've learned and creating spaces for others to be resourced. You're about to watch a workshop from VOUSCon 2023. I hope it encourages you and equips you for whatever season of life you find yourself in. Enjoy.
Today we're going to have a conversation with some creative contributors, some artists, some designers, creative directors, and entrepreneurs, what it means to have and to live a creatively divine life. So I'm going to just kind of go around and just introduce you. Guys, we have Pamela, who is an incredible woman. She is a 6-time Emmy-winning journalist, guys. That deserves a hand, honestly. She is a co-anchor of Primer Impacto. I grew up, my mom watched that. I grew up watching that in the background. I have my friend Pedro here, who is a founder and creative director of a brand called Friends and Family. And I have here my friend Tiago. Yes, let's clap it. He is an international mixed media artist, and I'm so glad you guys are all joining us today. Thank you for being here. Come on, let's give it up for all of them. We'd love to kind of start just to figure out, how did you get into what you currently do right now? And we'd love for you guys to maybe just go and quickly just discuss, how did you get into, for example, for you, how did you get into journalism?
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy to be here. Like Geri mentioned, VOUSCon has been amazing this year. I think beyond any of our expectations. So we're just so grateful to be here today. It's okay. So like Geri mentioned, I'm a journalist. I've been with a media company called Univision for 20 years. I just celebrated 20 years. I know, I started very young, obviously. I've been anchoring Primer Impacto for the last almost 12 years. So I'm very grateful, and I've been very blessed to be, I think, unleashing my creative side with something that I'm very passionate about, and that I love, and I know that many people dream of doing. And every day I wake up so grateful to the Lord for allowing me to have this role. But also, like, later on in my spiritual journey, I also realized the platform that I have to not only create for God, but also create with God. So I think that's very important to highlight in terms of, like, once you find your mission, it's very easy. And I think sometimes people limit themselves in terms of, like, oh, but I'm not in a creative role. I'm not in, like, I'm not an artsy type of person. But there's so many ways. And I think when I was young, I had such a wrong definition of what creativity was. I think we limit ourselves to say, oh, creativity means, being artsy or doing this, and really is thinking a different way, pushing the limit and kind of like breaking the mold and just thinking outside the box. And that's what we get to do on a daily basis. So I think everyone who's here, I don't know the backgrounds, of everyone who's here, but I think everyone has that ability and that gift. And, and God definitely created us to be creative, to confirm how creative He is. So I've been at Univision for 20 years. I always wanted to, I'm in the business of obviously gathering news, reporting news, but also storytelling. And I think that's the part and the facet of my job that I enjoy the most, and the one that I take the most seriously, because I have a big responsibility to tell other people's stories. We'll get to know, I'll share a little bit more of the story that I've been able to tell, to glorify the Lord in my job.
My name is Tiago. Good morning, everybody. Funny, so as a kid, I felt always art was it, right? But never took serious. I felt like, oh, that's not something that I can live by. I grew up in Brazil, so in Brazil it's kind of like a little different. If you're an artist, like your dad or your mom saying, that was great, that's cute, but you're going to become a doctor, or you're going to become a lawyer, or you're going to a school, or whatever it is. So never took serious. So I went to that path of, all right, I got to listen to my parents, right? Like, all right, cool, so I'll go to school. But it was a big challenge to me. I could not fit into that mode of schooling, because my mind is so wired creatively that I felt I'm not it. I feel this urge to continue painting. So as a kid, you become rebellion against that system. So I think that was the street for me. That was adventuring what was happening in the US that time because I was not here yet. And I felt, man, I want to get more into the New York feel of like art and the whole era of 80s, 90s art. So I felt, you know what, I can do this if I move to US, right? So I convinced my parents, hey, let me study in the US. Let me come to US and start venturing that. And I think that's when it started coming in as feel like, all right, art is it. That's what I want to do it. And like, long story short, I felt was hobby for a long time. I was scared. I was afraid to take that step of a full-time artist. I felt I was connected to a lot of art setup that could help me get that emotion, that urge of like being an artist, but I was not full-time artist until I got saved and I understood that art was bigger than just me. Art was not just a thing that I just had for fun or a business. I felt God want to use my art to now not only bring a solution, to bring a change to people. So when I took that initiative to say, all right, it's more than just art, so it's all in or nothing. And that time, I know it's a cliche to say, but hey, it's no plan B, it's always plan A. I felt I went to that route, say, hey, I'm scared, but I'm gonna do it. And I think when I got into that, it's just believing in God, you know, like we are designed, you know, like we are creative, you know, but God designed us for this moment like this, at such a time as this. So, all right, God, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a singer, so use my talent somehow to the world and using to God and whatever I need to do. So that's why I got into it, yeah.
What about you, Pedro? It's beautiful.
I think for me it's a little bit simpler than you guys. I grew up doing graffiti as a kid. So then, you know, I started when I was in middle school doing graffiti, then throughout high school, and then, you know, senior year came and I didn't know what I wanted to do after. So my family was like, well, you like doing art and graffiti, why don't you figure out how to monetize it? And, you know, and I didn't even know that graphic design was an option in college. So then that was my decision. I was like, okay, I like graffiti, I like art, and graphic design is available. So I went to art school for a couple years, and then I think I did art school for like a year and a half actually. And I opened my first business shortly after that, which was a printing company. Did that for a couple years, and then closed that one down when the recession happened in 2008, and then that's how I got into apparel. But pretty much the short answer is graffiti changed my life.
Graffiti changed your life. I love that. What was your tag name?
It's not that I don't want to say it. It's like it means absolutely nothing. So then if I say it, it's like, what does that mean? And it's
What is it? What is it?
Okay, I'll explain it. So in middle school, you know, I wanted to get into graffiti, and I came up with this, I don't know, some guy, he's like, oh, what letters do you like? I'm like, oh, I don't know, I like B and S or whatever, you know? He's like, oh, what about beside? Like, beside me?
Okay.
And then to make it cool, it's like, oh, just drop the D, and it's beside. So it means absolutely nothing.
I love putting him on the spot like that. Pamela, you mentioned something which is really interesting, kind of leads to a second question. It's like, we're all creative, right? So do you think that creativity is something that we are born with, or is something that we learn along the way and we nurture?
I love this question, actually. So again, like I mentioned, you know, even when I was invited to this panel and I saw what I was assigned, because last year I got assigned how to be an effective communicator. I'm like, oh, okay, great, this is easy, makes sense. When I got the assignment this year, I was like, oh my God, these are like real artists. Like, I don't consider myself like an artist, right? So I really had to, it was a nice exercise to kind of self-analyze myself and how I ended up being in this panel, right? And so I dig deep into that question. I was like, okay, but wait a minute. We're all artists, right? We're all artists. And I think, like when Tiago mentioned, there's, I guess, so much joy when I see an artist living from their art, because there's nothing more sad than an artist that hasn't unlocked their artistic hearts. And we all have that, right? So it's just trying to find where's our canvas, where are we going to create and how we're going to create. And then when I went to business school, like in a few years ago, and one of the things that we looked into was this study that this guy called George Land did, right? And he argued that every single child, according to his study, is born creatively. Everyone's born creative with a creative, mind, gene in them. But we lose that creativity through the years, right? And I think yesterday when I heard that song, I don't know if you guys heard the song that Don Cherie sang called Childlike. We need to think, we need to create childlike, with that childlike mentality. Why do we lose that creativity? And this is the argument in the study too, and it makes sense even in our faith journey, because we believe the lies, because we limit ourselves, because we get robbed from that, natural impulse to want to think outside the box and do something different. So I definitely think we all are born creatively. I just think we need to strengthen that creativity, surround yourself with people that are going to believe in you and push you and not limit you, because I think we're unfortunately, even we limit ourselves. We're saying oh, I'm not artsy, or I'm not capable of doing that, or I'm not thinking of it. Let's just do it the way it's always been done. And those are just sad, weird statements to make, So I think we're all born creative and we all have that artistic heart. We just need to be able to unlock it.
I love that. Which leads me to, Tiago, maybe you can help me with this. How do you nurture creativity? What are some things, some practical ways that you can nurture that creativity? Pamela said surround yourself with people, but maybe there are something that helped you along the way.
Also, I agree with Pamela saying we are all creative. We are created to create. So how I nurture is I not only from people, listening to people's stories, reference from people that done that what I've been doing it, and also what I do is just completely get people around me that doesn't do art, right? Why I'm saying that? Because when we, in our own wire way, we figure out a way, oh, that's what I'm gonna do, that's my talent, that's my creativity. But sometimes I get in this tunnel vision that I'm like, okay, everything's great, everything's right, but sometimes I'm not doing right, So sometimes I check on people that is doctors or friends that are lawyers, people that see in a different way what I'm creating. So listen to people's story not only, but also involve yourself in a position of learning. I feel like how I get creative is learning every day a new thing. Not only inspired by nature, not inspired by people around us, but put yourself in a position that I'm ordinary dude, that God blessed me with an extraordinary gift. And we all in the same place here, all together in the same, we different, but we have God, right? But we're in a different journey. Everybody's different journey. So I want to know different journeys so I can apply that to my creativity, what I can learn from that. What I can learn from Pedro, from Pamela, from different people, in this room, what we just saw in the video. That inspired me to continue being creative, to doing more, to make that solution somehow through art.
I love that. Before we go any further, I want to let you know, we're going to open up the floor to questions. So if you think of something that you would love to ask, write it down, take out your phone so you don't forget, because we're going to have a moment to do a little Q&A at the end. Pedro, what do you think are some ways to nurture creativity, perhaps even in ministry? How does the church could play a role in that? Maybe plugging yourself in a team. Some practical ways to help those people that think that they're not creative, right?
Right. Yeah, I think what's important in all areas of life is having community and having people around you, right? I think that always makes the journey better. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. I always look at ministry. A pastor a long time ago, 25 years ago, told me, ministry is like a roller coaster, right? There's highs, there's low, but we want to enjoy all of those moments. And I think the way that we enjoy those moments and, avoid getting burnt out or overworked is surrounding yourself with a good community, people who are there to pick you up when you feel down, people who, when you feel like giving up, can encourage you, inspire you. I think all that stuff is good, not only just for ministry, but in life and in creativity, to nurture that, being around people who are creative. One of the things that I love to do is just being around business owners or creatives and just having a conversation, going out to lunch or going to dinner. I have my friend Zach here. Me and Zach don't talk all the time, but every time we have conversations, it always revolves around creativity, how he's doing in business, what he's doing, what I'm doing. And those conversations, we always hang up more inspired than what we were going into those conversations. So having conversations, I think, changes a lot, unlocks a lot of things inside of us, inspire us, encourage us. So I think overall, it's important to have those people in your life that you could have these conversations with that'll make you stronger, inspire you more to keep going forward.
I just wanted to add something really quickly because I was thinking, okay, I've been doing this for 20 years, and every day you wake up and people are always like, don't you get bored of just like getting up every day and doing the same thing? And you know, we have a live show every day, and I want to just shout out to Ivana, who's one of our senior producers at Univision. And Ivana could attest to this. And I think how I maintain creative, right? How I maintain that creativity alive and that fire and the passion is identifying your why. Why are you creating? Why are you creating? Because you could create every day, like, okay, you know the formula, you know how to do it, but you really have to find the why inside of you to really, I think a reflection of whatever you're creating, whether it's a piece of art, whether it's like producing an entire show, whether it's like, creating like a new way of like organizing your team or meeting, I think you have to really be true to why you're doing this thing, like your main purpose. I think once you identify your why, it's so much easier to keep that passion alive and to be authentic to yourself. And it goes back to like artists who sometimes people that tell their parents or their other friends, hey, I'm gonna just focus on this from now on. And they look at them with like dissenting faces of like, this is so irresponsible, get a real job, find a 9-to-5. It's actually irresponsible to not be true to your passion.
Let's go. That's good.
It's just so heartbreaking and irresponsible to not follow your passion and really, because that's the only way you're going to be productive and you're going to really produce a good product out there, if you really find your why and you're true to that.
That's really good, Pamela. Thank you for sharing that. I think rejection, something I always want to hear for entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur myself. 3 years ago, I started my own interior design business. And it's not all like, flowers and lilies and rainbows and butterflies and unicorns. There are some really hard times. And sometimes a lot of people don't talk about those hard times. And I think we got to get a little louder because I think at moments when you, in your creative journey, you face hard times, you're like, God didn't call me to this. No, I'm running the other way. And you're just, no. And no, it's part of, it's like Pedro was saying, it's like sometimes, it's like ministry. It's a roller coaster. There's highs and lows. So I want to know about some of in your creative journey, in your entrepreneurship, in your business, how you overcame failure and how that helped you, and maybe tell me about a scenario, something that happened to you, how it felt. I'm sure it felt pretty bad, and how you overcame it.
Okay. You want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
All right. Wow. As an artist, it's funny because a long time ago, I used to hear this whole thing. It's not such a thing as living artists. Like you need to die before you benefit from your work. So I thought, I disagree with that. I felt like, no, there is something else. And I remember as a kid remembering this. And failures, man, is so many no's. Yeah. Through art, I received more no's than yes. But I knew what I had, and I had to keep myself like consistent to what I believe. Deep in my heart, I know what I'm supposed to do. And I think like those days come, and you don't feel inspired to paint. You don't feel inspired to do anything. But I think overcoming is basically saying, hey, God, I know what you put in my heart, and I'm going to continue doing it. And I think I remember one story that stuck to me was when Picasso was like very doing his great works. Miro was kind of having a conversation with Picasso. And it was an interesting story because Miro was like a surrealist, and he was not having it. Like he was like, Picasso, I don't know what's going on. Like really, I'm teaching all this new era of surrealism, right? Like Salvador Dali and all that. And why I'm not famous, why I'm not happening. And I remember Picasso just like a story saying, hey, it's like kind of waiting for a subway, right? You stay in your lane, you wait for it, it will come. And I think that is the mindset that I kept in my mind, saying, you know what? It's going to come. It's going to come. If you stay consistent in your work, the quality, the excellence, everything that you believe in will come. It will come. So I think my really is not a thing, but when I have those down moments, I really go to knee down. I really go to God. Because even my own strength, I cannot even paint. I feel like even my desire as a human, I'm like, why are we doing this for these people? Why are we doing this for that? Like, so I feel like I go back to God. All right, I failure again. You my solution. What I need to do this now. What I need to bring it to reality now. What I gotta change in myself as a man or a human being. Say, all right, what I gotta do better. God, show me. Holy Spirit, anoint me. So what is next? And since then, salvation and all that, I felt, even in my way of choosing clients, not choosing, I don't choose, but it's like one of those things, God, bring me somebody that really needs to hear you. So when I'm painting, when I'm going to a canvas, when I'm doing a project, I don't see the world like, oh, I do Christian things or I do. No, we all in one world, right? So if God is one anointing something from me, it needs to be in somebody else's home. Because that home needs something. It's hope, it's love, it's patience, restoration. And I think after I put myself in that position, understanding the purpose and the why, it's like, you know what? I have the why, I know the purpose. So God, bring me the right people. You bring the client, you bring the person that needs to have your anointing in their home, in their business, in their hotel, in their facility, because I want their change, like their lives to be changed for your glory, not for mine. So it becomes more than just, hey God, you the painter, I'm just the brush. And that pressure of failuring, I didn't fail, you failed, God. Right? Because it's like, hey, if I'm going through this season now of like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to create, God, you got to give me something, because you're the painter, I'm just the brush. So after understanding that, the failure you overcome easier than without salvation, I guess, but yeah.
It's really good. Pedro, tell me about
That's pretty deep, bro.
I know, that was really...
You're the painter, I'm the brush. I like that.
Put that on a shirt.
For me, what's worked is just making a commitment to what I'm going to do, right? It's like something God's placed in my heart. It's a God dream, and I'm going to stay committed to it, and I'm going to see it through. The reason I say is because I had one of the first brands I did was a kids brand many years ago, and I thought it was amazing. I loved it. To this day, I still love it, what we created. But in my mind, I had created this idea that it would sell out day one. Like, that's how much I loved it. And I think it's important for you to love what you create and what you do. But it didn't sell out day one. So because that was my mentality, I ended up giving up on it, right? It's because it didn't sell out. Now, that's it. I'm not going to push forward. So when I started Friends and Family, I made this commitment that no matter whether we sell 5 T-shirts or we sell 1,000 T-shirts on day one, I'm committed already to our second collection. And I think that helps when you're building a business. I think the hardest thing about building a brand or building a company is getting past that excitement in the moment, right? It's like, I tell people it's easy to build a brand. It's exciting. Your friends are excited about it. Your family's excited about it. They're all going to support. They'll buy the T-shirt the first time. But how do you get past that, right? What happens on your second collection when now your friends already bought it, your family already bought it just to support? How do you get other people now to buy into what you're doing? And I think that only comes with making that commitment. It's like, I'm going to see it through, right? And we have this saying that we like to say is, if you don't quit, you win, right? So don't quit on your dream. Don't quit on your why. Don't quit on the project that you're working on. Don't quit on your passion, because if you don't quit, you win. See it through. Stay committed to what it is that you're doing. Again, there's going to be highs. There's going to be lows. But I think if we have a committed heart to say, hey, whether I sell 1 or I sell 1,000, I'm going to keep going.
Let's go.
It's really good, Pedro.
Pamela,
Pamela,
I have
do you
so
have...
many rejection stories. Like, it's hard to choose one, but I'll share one from early on in my career. So when I started at Univision, I started part-time, and I was part-time for like 2 years. And then this opportunity came up with the radio station. Back then, I don't know, everyone's too young for this, but it was called Footy and the Six. It was a morning show with Kenny and Footy and Y100. And back then I was cheering for the Dolphins, and they had offered me a job, a full-time job with radio from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. I went back to my GM at Univision, and I told them, listen, I want to work this job full-time with radio, and then I'll come back and I'll want to do my part-time with TV. And he came back the next day and he told me, listen, you can't take the full-time. And I remember crying and being so heartbroken because I was like, this is my chance. I want, like, you know, health insurance, like basic, you know, needs. I'm like, I want health insurance. I want a full-time. I need to, like, I'm working like 4 jobs. Like, I just need like this stability, this financial stability. And I remember he looked at me. He's actually a great mentor of mine now, Luis Fernandez Rocha. And he told me, listen, do you want to do TV or do you want to do radio in the long term? And I said, well, I want to do TV, but this is like, you know, for now, this is going to help me. He's like, you can't get distracted. Don't get distracted with something that you don't want. Don't get tempted with the, you know, immediate recompensa, reward. Don't get distracted with immediate reward and gratification if in the long term this is what you want to do. And I remember I was so heartbroken and I was so sad because I was like, man, this is so good. Like I want, you know, it would have been perfect. My plan in my mind, like perfect. I'm gonna have the financial stability. I'll be able to still like grow at Univision. And he forced me to say, no, I can't do that. Wow. The next day he made me full-time. The next day he goes, I believe in you, but if you have to believe in yourself, if you want to do TV, just let go of this. It's still not going to be the same what you're making, but you know, you got to invest in yourself and believe in yourself. So I think in that terms, it's like sometimes don't mourn over something that, and Pastor Rich has been preaching about this, something that God rejected for you. Sometimes you feel like, but you know, my son just didn't get into school a few months ago that I really, really wanted, because again, this is your plan. And when you refuse to surrender, you suffer so much more. Yeah. You suffer so much more. Like, just surrender. And I applied to the school with my son, and he got waitlisted, which for me was like, my son got rejected. And then going forward, you know, I learned he ended up going. He just actually 2 days ago, I just got a call. He got into another school that I would have never considered if I wouldn't have gotten rejected. And it's so much better. And God's plan, again, it's so cliche to say, but God's plan is always so much better than yours. And just learn to surrender early on. The faster you surrender, the faster you're going to see, you know, the great results that God has for you.
Well, there's some good stuff, guys. Love that. I think that as creatives, perhaps maybe there's some people in the room who are entrepreneurs, you're starting your business, or maybe you do this as a hobby, maybe you serve on team at your church. I think that at times we feel that, you know, as creatives, we're gonna live this creative life every single day. You know, you're gonna wake up like in the brush, you know, it's just gonna, like, I'm just going to my canvas and I'm gonna create. And it's like, not really. At times, you know, even when you own your own business too, you think you're gonna live this creative life, and you're gonna have, you kind of have this misconception that everything is, once again, rainbows and unicorns. But there's some mundane tasks, you know, part of the business of owning a business, you know, there's Zach, you probably heard this before, but yeah, there's a lot of back-end work that no one kind of tells you about, you know, in the beginning when you're dreaming and when you're really excited, but there are. And perhaps too, you've started your business and you know, the hype is over, like Pedro was saying, and everything, you started, it's been a year. Maybe it's a dry season right now. Maybe you are, from the mundane tasks and the back-end work and the dealing with clients or dealing with teams and all that, you kind of get discouraged, to be fully honest. It's very easy. Or perhaps you kind of in the dry season of where your business started and you've already put in all your best and creative work and you're just like, I don't feel that creative anymore. How do you get past that dry season? How do you stay motivated through the mundane tasks? How do you keep going even in those lonely seasons and those not so creative seasons and the not so creative tasks? What are some things that helped you along the way to, you know, especially in those seasons?
Wow, that's a tough question. It's funny enough, I feel often I get, as an artist, you get to this vibe of when you're too busy, you're like, great. Then you're doing it. You constantly motivating yourself. And then when it gets to that dry season, it's almost like, what happened? That's it. It's done. I'm not going to be an artist no more. Or what's going to happen? I'm gonna have a client? Like, oh my God, like what is happening? I feel I get to the panic mode, and thank God for my better half right here, Stephanie. She's like, come here, come to earth, let's figure it out. But I think what I do is understand those dry seasons are seasons to invest in myself. That's good. Okay? Why? Because sometimes, like, like awesome people have like, I have the blockage, writing blockage or creativity blockage and stuff. I think sometimes God is just telling you, wait, listen now. Because you've been talking a lot. So I need you to come back, go back to the table, get everything out of the table, and I want to bring you something new to you now. Yeah. And I think often I had the mistake, and that often happens to me. I keep going, reliving moments from 3 years ago, from 2 years ago, or yesterday. That moment was great. Yeah. I sold out, I did this, or it didn't sell out. I'm struggling, but I still invented this new product or whatever it is, and I keep like living by the success from yesterday. But God's saying, look, it's today and now and in the future. So how I do it is literally invest in myself those times, understand what God want to talk to me, what I need to produce next, what I need to become next. Maybe I need to check myself mentally, right? Not to get like tired of doing this or maybe exhausted like to create something new. So I think I'll go back to the board, wipe everything off, and say, all right, God, so now bring you what is new, right? What is next? And what is that in practical, right? What do we do, like not God or Holy Spirit, but also to, all right, so maybe there's a new item that I need to add it. There is new networking that I need to do. There is new people that I need to reach out, knock on doors. Hey, maybe it didn't happen this month. All right, let me knock the doors. Let me go after. Don't be scared to go knocking doors that you've never been and say, hey, I just want a chance. I received so many no's already. Might as well, that was going to be another one to the shelf. So you know what? Let me try. I feel also like in the beginning of my career, I was scared to even talk to people. I was scared to say, afraid of the rejection and afraid of like, are they going to say no? But I learned that when those dry season comes, those that knocking doors need to happen. I need to check different business. I need to check different designers, different curators, different people in my field saying, hey, what is happening? Hello, I'm here. Let's figure out something new, an idea. Real quick, a little story. We all went through COVID, right? We all went through that phase. That was the driest season I ever been. So when that year hits, right, 2020, first email in February, first email on March, my wife can say that. I felt like I was crying. I was like, everything is canceling. The show that I had to set up, a deal that I had set up that would set my life for gray, went down. Everything went down. That was the driest season as creative as an artist, a full-time artist, because I depend on galleries. I depend on showcasing. I depend on one-on-one experience to people say, hey, I'm painting live, I'm doing an event, come to my show. So when that happens, everything's gone, everything's shut down. And I remember that day, like that season, gallery owner, great friend of mine, contacted me and said, Tiago, look, come and collect your pieces. Because I'm going to go online, but I'm going to take a vacation now. So I said, great. Took all the pieces. I went and talked to him, said, look, you sure you want to do this? He's like, yes, I need to close this. I'm not going to pay for this. I'm not going to pay for the gallery he's renting. And I remember he's saying kind of like, look, and I actually asked him, I said, look, Lucci, how many months you have this, or the rental, or the deposit? He's like, man, the deposit's already gone. I have probably one more month. I said, all right, that's fine. All right, cool, great. Took the pieces, went back to the studio. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was just praying. I was just, God, what I do now? What I do now? Like I have a family. I have 3 kids. What I do now? So when that happens, I remember God saying, art cannot stop. And I'm like, all right, God, what is art cannot stop? Art cannot stop. And I remember calling Lucci at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, yo, art cannot stop, bro. He's like, okay, we talk tomorrow. Long story short, God was giving me that vision that we are the art. We are the masterpiece. And we cannot stop. So the dry season is going to come. But we need to changed that mentality, saying, no, we gotta survive somehow here. And I think the surviving mode click in, and I was like, all right, we're gonna start something. I'm gonna lock myself in a gallery for 15 days if I had a COVID, and I'm gonna paint the whole gallery. We have 1 month, all right, we're good to go. I invest some money and say, all right, I'm gonna keep this open. And I was able to produce that art. I was able to do a whole gallery show by myself, online, through live, through all this stuff. And God right there, after I finished everything, God said, you understand that? You are the art, you cannot stop. So dry season gonna come, that's every day is gonna come, but you cannot stop. You are the art. So that's how I get out of that.
I think we have a couple minutes left, so I'll be
Yes.
short. I think as kids, I remember, growing up in elementary, and there's always this saying, like, you could be whatever you want to be when you grow up, right? You want to be an astronaut, you want to be a fireman, a policeman, a lawyer, a doctor. It's like, you could be whatever you want to be, right? And I believe all that. I think as kids, they should be inspired and have dreams to be what they want to be when they grow up.
Yeah.
But I think what happens to us in life and what they fail to tell us is that on the way to that dream, there's a lot of failures and there's a lot of setbacks.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing in business, right? So many people get up on stages like this and say, chase your passion or go after your dreams. But nobody really tells us how hard it is, or that there's gonna be setbacks, or that there's gonna be dry seasons, right? So I think if we were to go into starting a business, into our creative field, knowing like, hey, there's gonna be dry seasons. There's gonna be seasons that it gets tough. There's gonna be seasons that we don't sell as much. If we go into it with that mentality, I think it becomes a lot easier to endure.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, then it's what happened to me with my first kids brand, right? It's like my only mentality was that we were gonna sell out day one. And because it didn't, I stopped doing it. But if we change that mentality, knowing that there's gonna be hard times, there's gonna be dry seasons, I think it helps in those moments to sustain and get past those dry seasons in our life.
It's really good. Really good. Pamela, you have anything to say?
Yeah, I wanted to ask. So during the pandemic, I think some people had obstacles, and some people I think were forced to just create, right? Because they were stuck at home. They were like, okay, what do we do? Everyone became like a content creator. Everyone became like, so I became one of those. So I had a friend who was like, hey, you should launch a podcast. Of course, everyone launched a podcast. So for me, the podcast was actually a business project that we ended up, working on. And I do need to highlight the fact that we need to acknowledge how difficult it is when you're investing your time and your money and sacrificing it on this passion of yours, right? So for all those entrepreneurs, there's an emotional connection to when you just bet on yourself and put everything, give it all into this, a project or product or whatever you believe in. So for me, the podcast became like that emotional attachment. Okay, like we're gonna put money with my partner. I recruited a friend of mine who was not in the communication business, but she worked for Meta back then for Facebook. And we're like, we're gonna put, we're moms. It was a mom focus. It's called Motherish, by the way. But the story is like, you have to be, one advice I got was, first of all, talk to someone who's good at this, who's been successful at what you're trying to do. So identify who already went through this and did well. And ask for help, and people love to help. And I always tell people ask for help because people actually love to help out. So this one friend of mine who had a podcast who had done very well was like, you just gotta be consistent. If you believe in yourself, and people are like, okay, she's at it every single week, even if it's only 5 people listening, then 10 people will listen, then 20 people will listen. If you don't believe in yourself and you're not consistent, no one is gonna bet on you. That's true. So, we were just consistent, and, podcast is very humbling because you get to hear who's actually, you get the numbers. You get who's actually listening to this, right? Who's consuming this, and you're like, okay, and it's growing and growing. And, a year later, we ended up actually collaborating with Univision, and they ended up kind of acquiring a library. But I think it's a confirmation that if you believe in yourself and consistent, and it's kind of like the fake it till you make it, then other people are like, oh, wait a minute, well, she looks like she knows what she's doing, and she is enjoying it, and she's consistent, and she's, taking it seriously and kind of like honoring her work and honoring what she's doing, other people will follow. It's a domino effect.
Really good gold nuggets here. Thank you guys for sharing all of that. I think consistency is key. I love that you said that, believing in yourself. Pedro always told me that it's like, if you don't quit, you win. So don't stop creating. Don't stop. Consistency, I think, in the creative world is huge. So I love what you shared about the dry season. I love how God turned it all around for you, and it was a shift in mentality. We have a few minutes, and I would love to take maybe like 2 to 3 questions. If someone has a question, okay, there you go. Everybody just went. Right here. Right here. Oh, right here.
Hi, should I stand up?
Yes.
Okay, cool. My name is Dallas. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Hi, yeah. Okay, anyway. Okay, so my question is for Pedro or anybody that can answer. So I have a background as a fashion stylist, but since getting saved, God has pivoted my direction, and He wants me to go into fashion design. So I was just wondering, as somebody wanting to start a startup, and God's giving you this vision, but you're like, okay, where's the coin? How am I gonna start the business? So I'm just wondering, like, what's like your advice on getting funding and like applying for grants and starting the vision, because faith without works is dead. So I'm like, what are we gonna do? Yeah. So yeah, that's my question.
That's a great question. So I'll tell you a quick story of, personal story in my life. When I first started Friends and Family, I didn't have much money to do it. And I have also a design agency that we design for other brands, so I know how much money it takes and how much time it takes, right? So for me, what I did, I have a friend that I spoke to, and I told him, I'm like, dude, I really want to start this brand, and I know that if I'm ever going to do it, like, now's the time, right? I have a good community of people that I know will support and it'll help, build the brand. But I don't have much money to do it. So he told me, he's like, bro, if you only have $1,000 and you really want to do it, you'd figure out how to make it work, right? And I think in that moment, God just reminds me of, like, you can't wait till you have all the resources. You can't wait till you have it all planned out, because that will cripple you, right? It's like, I don't have the money, so you don't do it. It's like, I don't have the designer, so I don't do it. I can't build a website, so you don't. But if you use what God's already given you and what you have in your hand right now, I think you'll figure out how to make it work. So for me, I figured out, okay, what do I have to make it happen right now? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? The goal is never perfection. The goal is just to move forward, right? So what can I do right now with what I have? So for me, it was like, okay, I could design, right? So I did the graphics myself. I had a friend who built websites. I was like, hey, I'm trying to do this. Can you help out? They helped out. Photography for the photo shoot. Little things like that ended up helping out, where I didn't have to put as much funds as it would actually take. And we were able to launch with less than $1,000. Just because I didn't put the focus on what I don't have. I focus on what do I do have and how do we make that work.
Hi everyone, my name is Dani. I'm coming from Geneva, Switzerland. And I have an organization that I just opened with a few friends for faith entrepreneurs. And we have this idea that there is a difference when you have an idea from heaven and you want to put it out. Those are ideas that will last and that will make a difference. So based on that, and also believing that everyone is creative, have you experienced a difference in your creative process when you put God in the table and when He's not? Like, maybe we have times where, like, God all the time, and then we have some times that we're so busy that we forget to put God in the table. So have you experienced a difference between that process when He is in the table and when He's not? So.
Absolutely. A few weeks ago, I went back to Uvalde, Texas. We were covering the 1-year anniversary of the shooting in Uvalde, and I had been there a year before during the shooting. So we went back and we were preparing these 2 shows. One was on Thursday, one was on Wednesday. On Tuesday and then Wednesday. On Tuesday, just really short, I was, I've been working a whole year for this anniversary. It was a really hard story to cover. We had, I had interviewed actually a local pastor from Uvalde to tell us about what it was like, to lose his great-granddaughter. And I realized that Tuesday, I wanted to control everything. I was like telling my executive producer, this is what we're gonna do, this is how we're gonna open, this is what we're gonna do. The show was not great. Came around Wednesday, I surrendered to, I go, listen, Lord, this is for you. Like, I wanna, stories move souls. That's the way that we're in the business, whatever business you're in, whatever, I always say, I'm in the business of news gathering, storytelling, but also of helping people get closer to the Lord. When I surrendered Wednesday, it was the best newscast we have ever produced, I think, because you surrender and you say, Lord, this is like for your glory, and we just want these stories to really move people and really have these testimonies, change like their mentality and just bring you closer to you. When you try to control everything, and again, because of, experts or years that you've been doing it, you think you could, hey, I'm the master, I got this, we've done this a million times, this is what we're gonna do. When you really, again, going back to surrendering, right? When you really, again, even if you're not creating directly for God, but you are creating with Him, you gotta create with Him. Once you hold His hand, you're like, this is, and you're gonna see it right away.
And just like adding something real quick, I remember my pieces before God and my pieces now. I think that was like literally to me how that answer, I couldn't sell one piece before. Now it's God is doing it. So like I see that difference like day and night.
We're gonna take one more, the gentleman with the glasses right here in the last row.
Brad, West Palm Beach. How do you guys take corrective criticism? Who do you take it from? When somebody says, you should have used that color, you should have used that word, you should have used that logo here instead of there. Who do you take it from, and how do you take it?
Well, I think it's important to take creative criticism in your journey, in your creative journey. Criticism, I think, helps you grow. I think that surrounding yourself with the right people, I have a group of friends who are either graphic designers, artists, or just people that are in the creative world involved, and I constantly show them stuff. I'm like, hey, what do you think of this, So I've created a group that I trust, and that they trust me, and that they want to see the best of me. So I find that feedback helps me grow. It sharpens. I think the Bible says that iron sharpens iron. And I believe that in the creative world, in your creative journey, entrepreneurship, you have to have, we talked about it in the beginning, I think community is important. But yes, I have a friend who's a graphic designer, another friend who's a photographer, another friend who's just a business woman, but very well versed in the creative world. And I constantly just show some of my stuff to her, to them, to all of them. My husband, it's a huge one. It's a big one. Like, what do you think, Nick? And he'll be like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. I think just creating a safe group that you trust them, they trust you, that you look up to them, and they respect your line of work. I think it's important.
Definitely, I love criticism. I love the question, why you don't like it. Just tell me. Like, don't feel free to tell me. Like, I feel like a lot of times we're very attached to our creation that we feel, I was like that, But now I feel like more, all right, so tell me why you don't like it. Give me those points so I can get that better. Because you're going to see in a perspective that I'm not seeing right now. And like, I feel like the same thing with Geri. Surround yourself. Zach is here, one great friend too. It's like, allow people to just speak in your life in that matter. So
it's really good. Thank you. Yeah, Pam.
Don't take it personal. I think feedback is always welcome, and it's so hard because our creations are like our babies, right? We're like, oh, this is like the best story, this is for an Emmy, and you're like, oh no, it's actually not that great. Don't take it personal. I think that's the best advice I got, and I think it works. And then it lets you, okay, like engage in conversation, like, okay, why don't you, oh, you're right, you're right. I could have changed this, I could have done a short, I could have included this, So I think just don't take the feedback personal, and just kind of like try to see it from their perspective.
That's great. I think it's annoying. I think criticism and feedback is annoying. It also depends on like who's giving it, right? And I think, I don't know if you work for an organization or it's your own company, but if you work for an organization, I think it's important to be submissive to leadership, right? So whoever the head of the department is, the creative director is, I think that that's always, you know, there's a bigger vision than what it is that you like. But yeah, I think for me, my feedback always comes, like, you also got to be careful with who you're asking from, in the sense of, like, there's going to be a lot of people say, I love it, it's awesome, just because it's like, you know, we want to be nice and kind, but you want real feedback as well. And I get that from my wife. My wife will straight up tell me I don't like it, right? And then sometimes I feel very strong about it and I'll go forward with it. But I think it's an honest feedback. Overall, it's annoying. Especially if, like, you're dealing with clients that are like, oh, make the logo bigger, right? Like, move it this way, change the cut. It's like, dude, you hired me because I know what I'm doing, you know? One way to avoid that, and I'll end with this really quick. One way to avoid that stuff is, like, do a lot of that work up front, right? If they don't provide you references, you provide references. Get a visual of what it is that they want, and that's gonna avoid a lot of the back and forth of change this, change that, I don't like it. So, yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Come on, give it up for all of our speakers.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you'd like to discover more content like this, check out the VOUS Friends and Family Network, created to equip you with free resources and real relationships. And don't miss the opportunity to be in the room next year at VOUSCon 2024, a gathering of global leaders designed to strengthen your faith and connect you to community.